Good morning. It's morning here in Taos, and it is Christmas Eve. The sun is just coming up, and I hope you all are having an amazing holiday season. I know we are. We have been traveling for the last month. We have been with our kids, skiing, facilitating a retreat, busy, busy, busy. And so this week, for this week's episode, I decided, instead of just trying to throw something together at the last minute, that I would actually use an episode from a previous podcast Scott and I were doing for a little bit. It was about a year and a half ago. It was called the Conscious Couple Podcast. We only did about 10 episodes and our lives changed and we stopped doing it. This episode is really pertinent to our audience, to you guys, because I know many of you experience dark nights of the soul, especially when you're going through an awakening process or a personal transformation process. And it can feel really lonely and really hard and really challenging. And as you will hear me talk about, I thought it was only one night, but dark nights of the soul happen every single time we go through a really deep transformation. And so, like I said, I know it's really pertinent and valuable and helpful for those of you that are going through this process and how to get through it. Most importantly, just to know you're not alone and that this is a normal part of the change and transformation process. So especially around the holiday seasons, when a lot of old triggers can be brought up because we're around family members and stress levels are high, I think this is a really important time, and getting ready to go into the new year. If you are experiencing something similar to this video, I think will be really valuable and helpful to you. So I hope you enjoy our previous episode of the Conscious Couple podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, Christmas Eve, Christmas, and we will see you next week.
Welcome back to the Conscious Couple.
Welcome.
And today we are going to talk all about the dark night of the soul. What is it? And how do you get through it?
Dun, dun, dun.
And begin. So, honey.
Hello, honey.
Dark night of the soul.
Hello, honey. Today, Dark Night of the Soul, which sounds so
You really sound
scary.
I just want to tell you this. You really sound like on SNL, Saturday Night Live, the sweaty balls episode, the two women. Yes. Welcome. We're back. Where Alec Baldwin gets up and he says he has his sweaty balls. But they're Christmas balls, but he calls them sweaty balls. But it's the women with the really bad,
apparently,
the really bad sweaters and all. That's who you sound like to me.
Welcome.
Yes, it's great. Let's really talk
well,
about
because
the
Dark Night of the Soul sounds so scary.
Well, it is. Well, because it can be.
Yeah.
It can be.
Well, okay, so let's start there. That's a great place to start. So how about we first talk about what is a Dark Night of the Soul? Because I remember, I'm going to tell you what I initially, when I heard that, thought it was. The person that was describing it would say, you're going to have this dark night of the soul. And I assumed at the time, at the place I was in my journey, that meant there's going to be one night that you go through in your life, and it's going to be really hard. You know, you're really going to go through it. And then once you make it till morning, then it's going to be over. And you are, once you've made it through that, you're free the rest of your life. You will never have a dark night again. So
totally not true.
If that is you, we are here to really help guide you and teach you what our experience of Dark Night of the Soul is.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll give you my little description and then you can talk about yours.
Okay.
So for me, Dark Night of the Soul just means you are coming up against your shadows, for lack of a better term. You are coming up against the pieces of you that have held you back your entire life. You're coming up against your ego, ultimately. You're coming up against that piece of your mind that has been holding you back from whatever you want to achieve in your life. So every single time you've gone to do something different and some voice in the background tells you that you can, or all the reasons why, and you listen to it,
The dark night of the soul is when you decide you're going to stop listening to it. That's, to me, what it is, the dying off of a piece of you that has been alive in the background for most of your life and has directed you into certain ways of behavior and thoughts and feelings. And the dark night of the soul is when you decide to stop listening to that.
All right. Well, so my version is, this is like the other SNL skit where we were abducted by aliens.
Yeah.
I was laid down in a field of wildflowers, and it was beautiful, sir. And where I said, well, that's not exactly how it went for me. Right. So, so I think because I've witnessed a lot of people going through this. We both have. And
have gone through it many times.
Ourselves many times. It is not one night.
Yeah, just to break it to you.
It's not one night, but it's okay. It's all right. Yeah. It's okay. It will be okay.
Yeah.
It is the awakening of who you really are.
Yeah.
There is a voice inside you that knows who you really are. We think we are this skin and bone and blood, the voice that we believe we are, the image that we believe we are, the person, the character. I love using Jim Carrey all the time as, we are just playing a character. Yeah. Scott is my character, and, this was his life, right? Well, the dark night of the soul is realizing that all of that is not necessarily who you are. And it's this path of trying to find out then, who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah.
If I'm not Scott Sunderland, if I'm not this contractor, if I'm not, this, married family man, then who am I then? And the dark night of the soul is the door that opens to a hallway that encompasses 1,000 more doors, and it's one after the other.
So I'm gonna take over your analogy role for a moment.
I am the analogist.
I know you're the analogist king, but I'm gonna throw one out here really quick because I think this is another good description.
Well, it better be good because you interrupted my story.
I did, so I'll be quick.
So begin.
So the dark night of the soul is usually where, like, when people say, oh, I want to change, like, I'm going to change, right? I'm going to really, like, live my life, and I'm going to do all the things to live my best life, and I've decided today I'm going to live, and I'm going to live to the fullest, and I'm going to do this. And then they start to peak the dark night of the soul, and they say, oh, no, never mind.
Yeah,
turn around.
I'm
going to close that door back up. But if you decide to stick with it, this is also what helped me to think about dark night of the soul as a most important part in transformation, a vital part of spiritual growth and transformation, is Don Hoffman's description of when a butterfly goes through the metamorphosis process. And so we all think, oh, this butterfly goes through he goes into the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, and some stuff happens, and then all of a sudden he's this beautiful butterfly, right? But actually it is like chaos and destruction when this caterpillar is in the chrysalis. When it first goes in, the caterpillar's immune system fights this transformation. So, like, it fights it to the death, to where it can't fight any longer. The immune system finally just totally. So basically the immune system is attacking itself. And everything in the caterpillar is trying to stop this process physically. And then once the immune system has been taken over, that's when the caterpillar literally turns to goo inside the chrysalis. So imagine that. Your body, because as you and I will both share what can happen even physically in a dark night of the soul, is a breaking away, a turning to goo. That's what we always say in my course. I'm going through the goo right now. And it melts, it turns to goo. And that is what has to happen in order for it then to fly away as a butterfly. So that's
the breakdown.
Yeah.
Okay. So my interpretation and dead on of exactly what you just said. And I love the analogy by Don Hoffman with that. It's fantastic. I approve.
Analogy. Yeah.
So the caterpillar, the immune system is, in this case, for you, is the ego.
Absolutely.
The ego, or the habit, I like to call it the habit, is who you think you have been all your life, this character. So the character, it doesn't want to die because it got you where you are, and it's worked pretty well. It's the car that you have driven, but you thought you were the car. You didn't know there was a separation.
Yeah.
So the ego is saying, wait a minute, you think I'm the problem? I'm not the problem. This is war. I am going to show you the power that I am.
Yes.
And in my course, I give I loved it.
Yes.
Which the
Share
courtroom scene in A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
Where Jack
Powerful
Nicholson is sitting on the stand thinking, you don't know who I am. I am the one who guards the wall.
Yeah.
That is who the Habit is. He's the one who guards the wall from letting anything come in to hurt you. But actually, Jack Nicholson is the herder.
Yeah.
He's the one keeping you pinned inside so you can't get out.
Yeah.
So that is the goo.
Yes.
Has to overcome the caterpillar and rip it apart. And that is the dark night of the soul.
The ripping apart of everything that you think you are and have known.
And then once you become the goo, that is where the magic starts. Because suddenly you start seeing things differently. And I know with you and, both of us and, a lot of people that, we've, worked with and had experiences with, everything starts to change in the most beautiful way. Yeah. And in the most terrifying way. It happens simultaneously. Two railroad tracks. And every day, you're not sure when you wake up what track you're going to be on. You don't know if you're going to be on the track of being ripped apart. Yeah. Or if everything looks beautiful.
It's the epitome of the unknown,
amazing.
Right?
It's like sitting in a warm summer day.
Yeah.
With a slight breeze, and then you warm up again, and the colors all pop, and the birds are singing, and then the opposite of that, which is you're laying in a New York City street,
almost
run
of
over
course
by cars in 6 inches of snow.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
Yeah,
it's the epitome of the unknown.
It is,
and where it's...
and you don't know where.
Yeah,
you don't know what day. You don't know where you're going to be. And it really is so drastic. It's the needle slamming back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
So that is a great definition of the dark night of the soul. It is not one night. It is a period.
Yes.
Now, my question to you is, does it only happen once?
I too believed that this dark night would happen one night and then, freedom and gold.
All right, so let's say it takes,
forever.
what give us a time period of what you think
so,
the dark night of the soul.
Great.
So the average person, first timers going through the dark
great
night
question.
of the soul is, so we know it's not a night.
Yeah. So it can be anywhere from literally one night, but typically I would say it's usually around 3 nights to 2 weeks is typically what I have seen in my experience, my personal experience in women I've worked through. But I would say average sometimes around 2 to 5 days usually seems the typical dark night of the soul.
Now this can be harder for others.
Yes. So I think we should describe the symptoms of a dark night of the soul so people can understand if you're going through one. Maybe you're asking yourself, oh, is this what I'm going through? I've been somebody that's been maybe going down a spiritual path. They're starting to grow. They're starting to be more mindful, awaken, become more aware of the things that they thought that they were. And all of a sudden they're starting to go, oh, maybe that's not me. Maybe there is something more. Maybe I am. Maybe this identity that I thought I was is just a character. And so as they start to ask themselves these questions and they start to do things differently in their life and they start to have more deeper, more profound experiences, then you can enter into a dark night of the soul, which is your soul's, it's literally your soul's pathway to growth and evolution. And so some of the symptoms, as if you want to share, Scott just went through, if he wants to share or not, apparently I'm putting it away, but he just went through a dark night of the soul for about a week, I would say. And so since it's kind of fresh in your mind, and I'll share some of the symptoms I've had in the past, what are some of the symptoms and signs of a dark night of the soul?
Okay, so for me, it's uncertainty, fear, doubt. And these are emotions that are you can't see out of them. So in other words, there is no, well, I'm just going to listen to music and I'm going to feel better. Not going to happen. The uncertainty is so strong. The fear is so strong. You can carry anything into it, unworthiness. It really feels like you want to die.
Yeah.
And it feels like everything is trying to kill you.
Yeah.
But it is your mind. It is the ego. It is the habit that is pulling out everything it has to stop you from fighting it.
Yes.
Because it's always been in charge. It's always been the boss. And now you're saying, no, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And that's Jack Nicholson sitting on the stand. You don't believe me? Okay. I am going to bring the house down on you. I am going to use every trick I have because no one knows you better than I do because I built you, and I am going to rip you apart. You will not be able to see out of the cage that I put you in. And that cage is going to be locked when you step in it, and that cage consists of fear, terrifying fear. Terrifying fear, and doubt, uncertainty, and that is how it's going to be.
And typically, I've lost my mind.
I've lost my mind can step into it. It usually doesn't happen for me, the lost my mind deal, but for me, it can. The one that you just spoke of literally just happened. I just kind of. You start to shed out of it. It's kind of like you find the key that has been hidden in the cage, and
he woke up literally.
And you open the door.
He woke up and he's like, "I'm good."
And you have to decide to come out of the door. That's the thing for me is I can find the key in the cage and I can open the door, but I don't necessarily want to walk out of the door.
Yeah,
and that's a whole nother thing. I don't know what that is. I call it stupidity or stubbornness, but it is, for me, I guess, I want to make sure that the thing that is causing me the pain, the ego, the mind, I have to be ready to shut it down. And I've kind of won the battle at that point because the cage door's open. It's open. I can walk through it. But I need to be ready. Yeah. And then how I do that is I need to go in. I need to do a very intensive breath work.
Well, wait. Let's not go there yet.
Oh,
because I
false,
definitely
false. Take that back. That was
so,
lies.
So we're going to give you tools and how we have gotten through them and how you can get through them. But before we get there, I just want to dive a little bit deeper into the signs and symptoms because a lot of times the problem is you don't know.
No.
You don't know.
No, it sneaks up.
So it's important.
Suddenly you're in the cage. You don't even know how you got there.
So it's important, I think, that we, if there's anything that you can walk away from with this is just even to know that it's okay, that this is actually what is happening.
Well, this is how I would like to explain it so people, like you just said, it's okay. Listen, it's necessary. It is.
Yeah, right. It's not just okay, it's necessary.
So those of you who are Abraham Hicks fans, Abraham does it it kind of in a different way describes this as Abraham talks in the way of steps, and Dark Night of the Soul can be step one. So she calls it contrast, or they call it contrast, where it's great to live the life that you want to live, but it's also important to know to the life that you don't want to live. And sometimes that's what we need to find out first. And how do you know you don't want it is by you feel it. You feel the pain of it. You feel the uncertainty of it, the doubt of it, all of that. And it becomes a strength of, oh my God, I never want to have to go through this again. And that gives birth to the life that you will live. Because you're telling you're telling the universe, so to speak, this is what I do not want. Yeah. But in order to know what you do not want, you need to feel what you do not want, and it is not pleasant. Yeah. So, Dark Night of the Soul in an Abraham is step one. Yeah. And that is going through the contrast.
And necessary, right? Again,
absolutely
back
necessary.
to the analogy, in order for a caterpillar to become a butterfly, it must go through that chrysalis. Only I want to add that with the butterfly example, it then becomes, caterpillar to butterfly, it goes to a butterfly, it's done. This, you will shed many parts. You will die many times. We talk about this a lot in our workshops. You will die
because
many
there's
times.
always growth.
There's always growth.
You can't.
If you choose.
Yeah, you can't be a 9-month-old baby and eat a steak. You have to grow in order to do that, and there's steps in that, and that's why it can happen multiple times.
Yeah. So some of the symptoms can include, as Scott talked about, the fear. Usually fear is the first thing. The fear can be visceral, overwhelming. You can feel it physically. Your mind starts to tap into any of your personal biggest, deepest fears. It's like if somebody knew every ounce of you and they were taking your deepest, darkest shadows and fears and telling you, convincing you that they're going to come true, that everything you were terrified of is going to come true. So there's a lot of fear. There can be sadness, tons of emotion. So lots of crying typically is involved when you're going through a dark night of the soul.
And you know what I think?
Dark night of soul.
The biggest part about it is what makes it so difficult. You are incredibly alone.
Yes. So that's another aspect is loneliness.
Darkness.
Yeah. You want somebody to save you, but yet no one can save you.
You can't understand the language that they're speaking.
Yeah. So loneliness is a huge sign and
Big
symptom.
one.
And then also physical symptoms. You can experience itching. It's I always liken it to, so like in my program when I work with women, we call it the goo, and I talk about it in terms of detoxing. Like your body is killing off a piece of you that has ruled you, as Jack Nicholson did, as you talked about. And so that's you physically go through that too. So itching, like lots of itching, sleeplessness. So having a really hard time sleeping, the
fevers.
Sweats and fevers is usually
Big.
huge. Your body is getting rid of stuff. And so physically you'll feel really tired, usually really, really, really tired. Like you don't want to get out of bed. It's almost like a deep depression, but it's even deeper. It's like everything you are afraid of that's going to happen is right in front of you.
It's locked in the cage with you.
Yes. And you can't see out of it. And nobody seems to be able to understand. And you want somebody to take away the pain, but nobody can. And so those typically are the symptoms. It's like all the fear, all the doubt, everything is like a freight train coming at you, and you cannot see out of it. You think, a lot of times for me, and I know for others, you think you are losing your mind, actually. And I'll share just a quick example of one that I had back in May. This one lasted about a day and a half, maybe 2 days. And it came on this quick, but I had been doing a lot of work with, shadows and light and dark and things like that personally. And I was flying from Florida to Washington State to see my kids. And on my flight from Florida to Dallas, I was watching actually the Umbrella Factory or Umbrella Academy. I call it Umbrella Factory.
That's what
Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
On the plane.
I call it unwatchable.
And
sorry, kids.
It's the best. It's the best. Umbrella Factory is the best.
False.
So by the time the plane landed in Dallas, hit the ground, I was convinced that I was losing my mind, which is one of my biggest fears, of course. So of course my ego is going to throw that at me. I was convinced I had lost my mind, that 100% convinced that all of this stuff that I had believed in, taught, lived by was wrong. And I was having a nervous breakdown, and I had lost my mind.
See it.
And so I got off the plane. I had thoughts of I should just walk into Dallas, the city, and just get lost in the streets, because that's where I'm supposed to be, in the streets. And it took every ounce of my physical being just to get off of the plane, sit somewhere and call him. And yeah, I'm losing my mind. I don't know. I think you may need to come pick me up, or I may be lost in the streets of Dallas for forever because I've lost it. And it was a short conversation.
Yeah.
Because...
yeah, it's just a reminder.
Right.
And then you can start to see through the incredible words of mine. You get
well,
to see
it's
through,
an understanding too.
You can start to see through it a little bit, and that's all you need. You just need a little light to shine in.
And there's an understanding that he knows he can't get me out of it, and I know he can't get me out of it. It's a solo journey. So what ended up happening, which was perfect, I had a 10-hour layover there. So I went in the American Express lounge, and there happened to be one little cubby, and I literally laid in this cubby for 8 hours that day and watched Umbrella Factory and cried. And then flew to Spokane that night, and then the next morning, still 100% in it. But I knew nobody could help get me out of it, that I had to do the things that I had to do, which we'll share.
So for me, this last one, I know how it started. So we were in Spain, and Simon had mentioned, a friend of ours had mentioned something about this healer that you get on the phone with her, and she does energy work on you. Now, listen, I've never really been, I always look at that all as placebo. And I don't know. I think my mind has been changed on that because, I mean, come on, how does this work, right? So that's the Scott. So I figured, why not? I'll do a session with her. Because I had been experiencing this knot, I guess is the best way to describe it, in my back. And, in my journey with Bufo, that became evident that was there.
Yeah.
And it always would flare up. It was like this giant muscle knot, and it became extremely uncomfortable. So I had figured, I'm going to do this energy healing, and I'm going to tell her. And I told her about it, and she said, okay. And I gave her some other things that were, I was dealing with. And, we come back home, and suddenly I'm in it. And I just can't get it together. First thing happened to me, I started to get sick. Like I started to get fevers and, the night sweat so bad. I'd be so cold. Everyone's been through that, right? So cold. I could not get out from underneath the covers. But at the same time, I would, in a minute, I would be on fire. And then I would have to open the blankets, and then I would be freezing. It was so ridiculous. I was really annoyed at it, but painful. And the analogy then is, the thing that was in my back, this knot, is what this healer did, or what I did, is the zit was popped.
Analogies.
The pus, the blister was broken, and the pus was coming up. Now, we talk a lot about this in our
zits
courses,
and pus and all of it.
And on our calls.
Yeah.
Of you have to get this up and out of you, and you have to use your voice, energy, exercise, anything, because now this pus is now leaching out of this giant zit that I had.
It wasn't
popped.
actually a zit, just so.
And that's what I was feeling. And it really becomes like you become the zit, because it is leached into your body. And as beautiful as that visual is, it really is beautiful, because if you learn to express it, and for me, it's usually a lot of screaming, a lot of anger, but it's fear-based anger. Yeah. It's frustration, it's uncertainty. So that's, for me, that is how I kind of deal with it, because I see it that way. I see it as a pus in my system that I need to get out, like it is actually coming up my pipe. Yeah. And I need to get it out of there. And once I get it out, then the other feelings can start to come up, But in the meantime, that pipe is filled with that poison of uncertainty, doubt, and fear.
Yeah. So you were going with how this happened for you.
What? Didn't I just say? No, I just said that's how I see it.
So it started with you being sick. It started with you being sick, and you were sick for about a week.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. It was the healer. And then we had a very dear friend in Orlando to see, actually several.
Yeah.
They were there for a Dr. Joe workshop, and we figured we'll go there for a day.
Yeah.
And we'll pick them up and bring them back to our place.
Yeah.
And when you step into that energy and you're not ready for it, especially a person who is open now to feel energy, that's another part of it. Because my pores aren't clogged anymore. Right. So energy runs through me. That can be good energy, bad energy. So when that energy stepping into even the hotel around everybody who is in that high energy, and I'm in the place that I am releasing this pus, suddenly it becomes very uncomfortable because my energy doesn't match the energy that's in the room, and doesn't match the energy of the people that just came out of the 7-day workshop. So that's what started it. I felt
it's
it on
super
the ride
high
home
frequency. It was an interesting ride home from there even. And when you enter into a space that has literally a really high frequency, because emotions are frequency. And when you walk into that space on the 7th day of a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, the emotions are extremely high, meaning love, joy, connection, spirit, create like all of the super high frequency emotions. And so if you go into a space like that, what happens is all the stuff that's underneath that has to be detoxed from your system. It can't live in your system anymore. So he came home and literally physically first, his body got rid of the toxins and the dense energy that was in him. And then after that what followed the physical was then the mental. So then it was, a couple days of the mental stuff that we just talked about. So his body physically went through it, and then mentally he had to go through it as well. And it's, And
it usually, for me, it takes a trigger. I need something to show up for me that'll get me usually very agitated. Very angry.
Starts the momentum, as Abraham would say.
It needs the momentum to come up to where it almost becomes a rage. And that's when I know it doesn't feel like it. I don't know it right away. But eventually I come to that like, okay, I have to get this out now. This needs to get out of me now. And I don't know. 2 days ago, in the closet, and screaming at the top of my lungs and bringing breath into my body like I have been underwater for a week. Like it is so deep and so powerful. And it's like, get out of me. Get out of me. And I don't care, man. I'm going to put my body through it right now. And I did that for probably about at least an hour in the breathwork ceremony, and then I just sat there for probably at least another hour and just let anything come. Tears, more emotion, whatever. And it is that breath that kind of it's like taking a clogged pipe and you're trying to get the hose strong enough that it starts breaking away the clog, but it's not strong enough until finally you just say fuck it, and then you blast it and you give it everything it's got, and it blows it out the other end. The pressure gets so high, and then it is like a pop.
It is.
It's like a
so
pop.
Here's the really great thing that you guys, if you choose to keep listening to us, here is the great thing for you, the benefit to you, if you dare to decide to continue to listen to our content, our podcast.
Get to see our torture.
Well, you get to see our torture, but you get to see the differences between how Scott teaches and how I teach, which is such a beautiful combination, I think, and hopefully will resonate with a lot of people. So if you've been watching us, not even just on this new Conscious Couple podcast, but before then, if you followed any of us, you'll see that Scott is a great storyteller. He's very passionate. He loves analogies. He'll paint you the picture and you're drawn in with the storytelling, and he'll inspire you and motivate you and he's all up in here, right? He's all up in the ethers, and which is amazing. It's beautiful. Like I said, it inspires people. It evokes, I think what storytelling does is it evokes that emotion and passion in you, and you can relate, right? Like
it's relatable.
His experience right there, like it's relatable. And me, I'm kind of like the nitty gritty logistical, like, okay, what's the tactics to that? Okay, that's a great story. Okay, now how do I, what does that look like for me in my everyday life? And so I tend to be rooted in that. He tends to be rooted up here, which is the perfect combination.
We're the perfect combination.
Really, I mean, to your advantage if you continue to listen to the nonsense.
Dare I say we are Chip and Joanna?
Dare you say, honey?
Of the home improvement. And
this is because we just watched Fixer Upper last night.
Do some of the things they've done.
Anyway,
there's ego.
Anyway, there it's got to show up. But really, truly, like that, as you can see, he tells stories, and then I have to wrangle him back to like, okay, let's go from A to Z. But you don't have to go from A to Z, because spiritual growth, personal growth is never from A to Z. It's from A to P, and then back to B, and then to C, and then to some other letter that doesn't even exist yet. So
it sounds like such a great time.
It is,
but there is a lot of the most beautiful moments.
Yes. So what I want to do now to end this is to give you guys some tips. So he just talked about, how this was for him really recently. And so we want to give you guys some tips, because again, how is this going to apply to your life if you're actually going through this right now? And maybe you feel alone. Maybe you feel like something's wrong with me. I think sometimes it's almost worse the more you know, or the more aware you are, because then you're even harder on yourself. Like, I shouldn't be going through this. I should know this. I know that's a voice that goes through me. If you're teaching people this, then you shouldn't have these dark nights of the soul anymore. And that's just rubbish from the ego. Rubbish. Because they're necessary. So the first thing I want to say is, if you are going through this, it's necessary and it's perfect and it's okay. That's the first thing. So what are some tools that you can offer the listeners that have worked for you, that maybe teach to the clients that you work with, to help navigate a
Well, I
dark
think
night of the soul?
awareness is always key. That's really number one of what is happening to me. Because I think if you can kind of put put crosshairs on it and to understand what is happening to you, the one thing that I will tell you, I will walk people through so many times, is please do not turn back from it. Yeah. If you turn it off, so to speak, and you say, oh, I can't go through this, it will come back harder.
Okay, so stop right there.
Stop right there.
Because I have another analogy. I'm taking over your analogy.
Are you telling me that's false?
No, I haven't. In fact, I wanted to tell this analogy, but I completely forgot about it until you just said that. So thank you for saying that. Another analogy. So we just had a really fun Scottish night the other night, and we dressed up in, our Scottish gear, and we cooked Scottish food, and we watched Braveheart with our friends. It was awesome. And the scene came up on Braveheart, and this is how I would describe it a lot of times to the women in my program. The Dark Night of the Soul is the scene. It's the first battle scene when they're in their first big battle. And the English army is charging them. They're this tiny little Scottish army, barely, like just
ragged.
Yeah. And like an eighth of how many men that the English have. And they're running towards them, and they're all standing there. And Mel Gibson is saying, hold, like to where you think they cannot hold any longer. And at the very last moment, they pick these spears up, and, it's pretty brutal. The horses get stabbed by the spears.
Why do the horses get hurt?
I know. But it for me, it's such a perfect picture of what he just explained, which is hold. Like, if you could just keep holding through it. That's...
Please don't turn away.
Yeah, don't turn away.
Because it really does come back harder. And you are going to have to face it. And that's... So, awareness, that's number one. Number two for me is going to be community. This is, to me, probably the most important part of it, is to have somebody that's gone through it, and somebody or somebodies to stand by you. They are not going to be able to talk you out of it. They're not going to be able to talk you through it. They're not going to be able to be there with you, even if they are literally next to you and holding you. You are going to go through this alone. It is a lonely process, but it has to be. It is necessary. Yeah. Because by you doing it on your own, it is your strength that gets you through, because you are building your strength. You are in the gym, and it is the last rep that you think there is no way I can get an 11th out of this set, and somehow your arms shake, but you get the weight up.
Yeah.
So that is, and then
Freedom.
there's a spotter there, but you're lifting the weight.
Yeah.
So
that's a great analogy.
I'm the analogist. I'm fantastic.
There's a spotter there, but you're the one doing it.
Third thing, is that right? 1, 2?
Yeah.
Third, because I have to give 3, right? Okay, so third thing.
Well, you just explained it, what you did in that closet.
I went in. And I think I had to wait in order for the pain. The pressure got so tight, so big, that I used the pressure of the pain to release it.
Yeah.
And I did that with breath work. And I went in, like, I didn't just sit there and say, I'm like, boom, boom, boom. I got the music, and I'm like, come on. And I'm to where I can't get it up anymore. Not that one. Oh, that always happens, by the way. There is never a letdown.
No, it's true.
True? All right, back to the show. So I'm breathing in as far and as much as I can, and even in the last moment, breathing as much as I can, fill my lungs in with my nose. I take a breath in with my mouth, and I just sit there and I squeeze that mola bunda down there.
Good
right?
job.
My root. And I squeeze it and I say, come on, motherfucker. It's war.
Yeah.
It's fucking war. Yeah. And it is sweat and it is spit and it is drool.
Yeah.
It is not pretty.
No.
But oh my God, when that energy comes up, and I know it's coming.
Yeah.
And it comes up and it's just like, yes, here we go.
Yeah.
And boom, it's out.
Yeah.
It's out. I can feel it moving through me. And, you know, that is it's a painful process because my throat kills me. Yeah. It is like I've been at a football game screaming, right? Yeah. So,
well, it's energy movement. Yeah. So I'll add a few more to you guys. So one of the biggest tools that I give the women in my program that I do myself is to set an alarm. So what that means is, especially I think for women, we want to take care of everybody else. We have those motherly instincts, those nurturing instincts. And so we want to help everybody else. But then when it comes to ourselves, we want to just like skip over that. Right. And so I think for me, allowing myself that space was huge. And so for the women that come into my program, setting an alarm is big for two reasons. Number one, it gives you the permission to feel all of the things that you're going to feel as you go through this dark night of the soul without needing to change them, without needing to cover them up, without needing to shove them down. And for men too, because, men are taught not to feel emotion. Yeah. And so the first reason why setting the alarm, the first reason why setting the alarm is important is because it gives you the permission to go, okay, I'm going to give myself 5 days. I'm just going to say 5 days. It may not take 5 days, but I'm going to give myself 5 days to just feel everything that is coming up for me. And if I have to sleep in bed, if I have to call in sick from work, if I have to get somebody to help with the kids, whatever it is that I have to do, it is vital that you allow yourself this space to feel these emotions.
Yeah. And even like comfort food and stuff like that kind of helps.
Completely. Yeah. I mean, you have to nurture yourself as you're going through this.
You do. And you know what? It not to flip the subject, but what's really interesting is when we were talking about when it started to come up for me when I went into the energy of the 7-day workshop, the last day, going in that dense energy, going into that higher vibration energy. We will talk about this in another podcast because that is so important, and it gives a glimpse of what it's like for somebody who goes to a workshop like that, ours included, and then goes back into their life and has to deal with somebody who hasn't. Yeah. That is exactly what it's like. So somebody is in very dense, stagnant energy. That was me. And then somebody, it is at a very high energy, and they are like the two magnets that repel each other. Yeah. Right? They don't suck together. Yeah. They repel. And that's why it can be very difficult to go back into into a life of who you thought you always were, because
are you taking us down? See, this is what I mean. This is why you're going to get perfect balance between the two, because he's taking you down some other.
Well, I'm just taking down another road because that was a perfect analogy.
Yes.
A perfect
so we'll
story
remember
of
that.
how that feels. We'll
remember that. We'll do an episode on that for sure.
I'm telling them foreshadowing.
You're foreshadowing.
I'm foreshadowing.
So tune into that episode for sure. Yeah, that's a really important one.
Is.
So the alarm system, your own personal alarm system. So let's say you say, okay, I'm going to give myself even 10 days. Maybe it won't take that long, but or 2 days. It's up to you to decide how long that's going to be. But let's say 5 days. I'm going to give myself 5 days. I'm not going to try to get out of it. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm just going to allow the things to happen. I'm going to allow the thoughts to happen. I'm going to allow the emotions to happen. And like I said, self-care and nurturing as much as you can. Community, even though, it helps you to not feel alone, but you will have to go through this. And then when that alarm goes off in 5 days, a lot of times just giving yourself permission to do that and setting an alarm will be enough, because it will allow you to work through them and ultimately release this part of the ego that's dying, this part of the old self that's dying. And it allows that pop to finally happen and that energy to move out. And that's the whole point of the Dark Night of the Soul. And then when that alarm goes off, then, okay, what can I now do to shift this energy? And a lot of times it literally is a switch. It's happened to me multiple times. I saw him do it the other day. It's like, okay, it's time to move forward. And that forward is a propelling forward.
Yes. And so the perfect analogy, again, the analogist, is we would always say all the time, is it's the bow being pulled back.
The bow being pulled back.
And if, some dark nights of the soul are kind of like a dusk night of the soul. It's not necessarily pitch black, so the bow goes back a little bit. Other times it goes way back there. And it's hold, and then finally that arrow goes so far, meaning you shoot so high, things get so bright, things get so amazing. The relief, it's relief.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful feeling.
It's your wings.
And that's the thing you have to realize. And I think
wings.
Once you go through 2 of these things, yes, that's right, 2.
Only 2.
It gets easier.
It does.
But it still gets harder.
Yeah.
Right? Is that an accurate way to say it?
It gets easier because you have more awareness of what's happening.
You've been through it.
The intenseness of the energy
can be darker. Yeah. Because you've been building yourself up to get this really dense, stuck shit that has been in your pipe to get it out.
Yes.
She's tapping me under the desk, and I don't think it's for
It's because we are coming
reasons.
up on time.
Oh, we're coming up on time.
We're coming up on time. All yeah. Right. So, and then the last tool, which actually he already said, but I'm going to repeat it, of course, because they don't call me the breath queen for no reason, but breath work. Breath work is by far number one tool that he uses, that I use, that many people in our programs use.
Daily root.
To the root breath work, really to move that stuff up and out and use that emotion, use that frustration, use that fear. You use that and you will feel it. Like he said, you will feel it move through you. And that's what breath work does, is it really helps move that energy up and out. It's like it's assisting it in its outward motion. It really helps dig it up and out.
It digs it. It digs it out like
and not
an excavator.
Just like an excavator, totally. And not just that, but also just to calm your nervous system too. A lot of the women use my breathing through the heart one because it just helps them stay really centered and focused. So breath work, I would say, is the last one, which, I have breathwork meditations for sale on my website. We both utilize them in our online programs, and there's all sorts of ways that you can connect with us. We do workshops, in-person workshops that we go through these breathwork techniques. So that is a conclusion of the Dark Night of the Soul episode. Do you have anything you quickly want to add, or do I dare?
I've been shut down, apparently. Yes, I would like to add, if you like this episode, please like and subscribe.
Yeah.
If you have any questions on this, please put a comment below.
Yeah.
If you just want to comment on how beautiful that she is, please do that.
Really?
Oh, I'm going to do that. I'll do that. Anyway, no.
Tell us about your Dark Night of the Soul. Share.
Please,
things that you've done or how you've gotten through it, and hopefully
it only helps somebody else going through it.
For sure.
No, I think that was very, very succinct
It's great.
On point.
Well, I guess we'll find out from you guys. So
They're all going to
happy
say,
dark soul of the night.